This is the Horse Radio Network.
Greetings, everyone. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily, episode 1408, brought to you today by Wintec Saddles. Today's tip is an excerpt from the Horses in the Morning podcast here on Horse Radio Network. Show co-hosts Glenn and Jamie are joined by Dr. Brian Burks of Fox Run Equine Center, and they're going to have a little chat about Equine Cushings disease. It causes a lot of consternation for a lot of people, so tune in. And we're going to get right to our tip after we hear from Wintec Saddles. Wintec has been combining world-leading innovations and high-tech materials into lightweight, weatherproof, easy-care saddles for over 20 years. So it's easy to see why Wintec is the world's #1 synthetic saddle brand. The comprehensive Wintec range offers not only cutting-edge designs, but new standards in fit, comfort, and performance. Benefits for both you and your horse. For example, wide fit is no worry now, with the Wintec 2000 All-Purpose and Wintec Pro models now available in wide fit. And what about our much-loved off-the-track thoroughbreds and their famously tough-to-fit high withers? Wintec has them covered too with the Wintec 2000 High Wither model. I might mention right here that I've ridden in the Wintec 2000 All-Purpose saddle for years. The seat is just deep enough for a comfortable, secure fit, and the grippy seat means full seat breeches are an option, not a necessity. Plus, it's well balanced, so legs and seats stay where they should. Check out the entire Wintec line of saddles at wintec-saddles.com or visit your local retailer and sit in one today.
Hi, Dr. Burke. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Fantastic. Where are we? You're in Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania, about 25 miles outside of Pittsburgh.
Okay. And is it is this right? The Fun Run Equine Center?
Fox Run Equine Center.
Fox. I knew it wasn't Fun Run. I was like, that has to be a misprint in my notes here. I'm like,
unfortunately, most of my clients don't find it fun when they have to visit me.
No, absolutely not. The Fox Run Equine Center in Apollo, Pennsylvania. Okay, gotcha. Well, we're going to talk to you a little bit about Cushing's disease. So I guess kind of give everybody the Reader's Digest version of what Cushing's disease is.
So Cushing's disease, strictly speaking, is a human disease. It was originally described by Dr. Harvey Cushing in 1932, and it involved the pituitary and the hypothalamus. But what we know now is that it involves a different part of the pituitary gland in the horse. It doesn't involve the same part, and we don't get all of the same things that happen, although it is similar. It's not the same things. For instance, horses don't really have problems with the adrenal gland, whereas people and dogs do get problems with the adrenal gland based on the pituitary. So the pituitary gland sits underneath the brain. It's not really part of the brain exactly, but it sits underneath the brain, and it gets some input from the hypothalamus above it. And what happens is the hypothalamus, over time, loses its ability to produce dopamine. And dopamine is what controls the hypothalamus and makes it do what it's supposed to do. So when you lose that control, you get all kinds of interesting things that happen.
Wait. What is it supposed to do?
Well, so it is supposed to help keep everything in regulation.
Okay.
Our growth, our metabolism, et cetera. It's kind of the control center for all the glands throughout the body.
Okay.
If you will. So without it, we don't do well. So
that starts to malfunction. Okay. So you think what? Sorry.
So that starts to malfunction. But we think that it actually starts in much younger animals. So typically we see the disease show up in teenagers or so. But we think it probably starts much younger, probably from free radicals that damage the hypothalamus over time. And so it's a gradual onset of symptoms, and most people don't even realize it's happening. When I talk to somebody, they'll say, oh, yeah, well, his coat's always looked that way since he was 2. Probably not. But it's so insidious, it makes you think that. It's very easy to think that. So I encourage people to take pictures of their horse, at least on an annual basis, and compare. What
Right.
did they look like? So we get a whole bunch of things that get released. And yeah, there are all these acronyms, which I won't go into on the radio, but the biggest thing is that we end up with clinical signs of these older horses. They are hirsute, so they have a long curly coat about 85% of the time. Because of that, they actually sweat a lot. They may or may not have an increased appetite. Probably 70% of the time they're drinking and urination is increased. They don't perform as well. They're quieter, more lethargic, depressed than they used to be. And their belly begins to sag. They get this pot belly, kind of sway back appearance because of muscle loss due to the disease. And then the fat distribution changes. So they get fat in the crest of the neck, at the tail head, in the sheath, and these supraorbital fat pads above the eyes. And then we get to chronic infections, skin infections, pneumonia, cystitis, can be anywhere. So they get over one infection, they get another infection. It's their immune system just isn't working right because of all these things running around. And the worst thing is laminitis, founder. So their feet begin to hurt. They don't walk well. They sit back on their haunches. And it becomes a real chore just for them to move around the stall. And, we begin to suspect this when we start to see some of these clinical signs. And they may not have all of them, but they will have at least some of them. But we see those and we see laminitis and we don't have another explanation for it. So we say, well, let's test them for some endocrine diseases and see what's going on. And the biggest one people think about, of course, is Cushing's. The other one is metabolic syndrome, equine metabolic syndrome.
Okay, so those are two different things.
There are two different things.
So is the Cushing's disease is a slow, like a slow rolling kind of thing, like one thing and then another, or do you just all of a sudden get hit with all of these things all at once?
No, it's generally an insidious response. So it's disease, I guess I should say. It's an insidious disease coming on over a number of years. So we think it probably starts maybe even before they're 10 years old.
Wow.
But we don't typically see signs in ones that age. I have seen it in a 2-year-old, and I have heard of it being diagnosed in a 6-month-old, but those are like way outside the bell curve.
Wow, that's amazing. So what I was saying before the show, before you came on, is that I have a horse that has Cushing's, and we kind of, my vet kind of started to notice it because I called her. I'm like, listen, this horse is urinating in his stall 5 times as much as every other horse. And everybody else's stall gets dry at the end of the day. And is it just, I don't know, he's just drinking more, or I don't know what's going on. And so we started to do some kind of figuring out, and it's like, oh wait, yeah, he does have a lot of extra hair, and he does have that pot belly, and he does have, he's kind of depressed, and he is incredibly hungry all the time. I mean, most horses are, they nicker for the feed, but like he vacuums up the hay. He's done with his hay 10 times faster than anybody else. Makes me feel like I'm not feeding him enough, So
right. All
of these things are going on, and I'm just kind of, so the treatment, talk to us about treatment for this disease.
So treatment is, a lot of it is based on husbandry. So if we know we get all these diseases, we want to do things to try and prevent them from getting laminitis. We want to do things to try to prevent them from getting subcellular abscesses and chronic infections. So just keeping them healthy by deworming, because they're more susceptible to parasites. We want to deworm them. We want to keep them vaccinated for all the respiratory disorders and things that they can get. So a lot of it comes down to trying to prevent all of these bad things from happening in the first place, but most of them end up on a drug called pergolide. And pergolide used to be on the market for people, but they took it off due to some cardiac problems. But now we have it back, fortunately. as an equine-specific drug, then they don't seem to get those problems. They don't get the cardiac problems that people get. So that's great that they don't. And the Pergolide we give is a pill every single day for the rest of their life. And what it does is it returns that function of dopamine from the hypothalamus that they don't have and makes pituitary gland return to some kind of normalcy. It may never be 100% normal, but it's much, much better. There are occasional horses that will get little inappetence from it or even a little colicky from it at first. And so we have to back off on the dose and we start those, because typically it's a 1 milligram dose, we start those at maybe half a milligram. Once they get over the signs, we start them at maybe half a milligram and then gradually work them up to the 1 milligram dose. There are some horses that don't respond to 1 milligram and may need 2 or even 3 milligrams. And that's getting to be a lot. You can get some side effects, more severe side effects, like they simply won't eat ever. They colic from it.
Is diarrhea a symptom?
And diarrhea can happen, yes. Yeah, so, we try not to let that Pergolide dose get up too high. There's a newer drug called cabergoline that's on the market, and it's a long-acting dopamine agonist. And for horses that don't respond well to Pergolide, which I have to say is pretty unusual, but does happen, we can consider that drug in use for those horses. And that may help
what's
them.
That called?
Cabergoline.
Cabergoline. And is that like an injectable or is it a feed through? And what's the price point on that? Because I know at this point, because we did the half a milligram on Chili for a while, and then we started noticing the urination started coming back pretty heavy and his stall was wet all the time. So we have now gone up to 1 milligram and he's good, but that's about $1 a day. So how does it average out with the other drug? I'm taking notes if you can't tell.
Should have anticipated that question. I really didn't. It's more expensive than Pergolide. I can say that. It's generally given by injection about once a week. But there are some oral formulations out there as well. But it is more expensive than Pergolide. So we try to stick with Pergolide whenever possible.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, he's eating a little pill. I mean, my gosh, you just take a handful of grain and with a pill on it and hand it to him. He just eats it right up. They don't even notice it's so tiny. So fantastic. This is great information. Now, give me like some sort of like positive news at the end of this, because I'm kind of feeling a little depressed right now, honestly. So,
the good news is
okay. Go.
Yeah, it's perfectly manageable disease. People come in here and they say, "Oh my God, it's a death sentence diagnosis." It isn't. Particularly once we treat it, once we know what's going on and we get it treated, we can get all of that infection under control. We can get their feet under control. I've seen ponies that come in here, they're just chronically laminitic, and nobody can get them under control. We figure out they've got Cushings, we put them on Pergolide, and lo and behold, the laminitis systems finally resolve. So that's the good news of it, is that we can control it for many, many years by these medications and by upping our husbandry, keeping them clipped, keeping them well, keeping them vaccinated and dewormed, all of those things. And watching the grass, of course, too, particularly in the springtime with the lush grass. Then we know not to put them out on all that lush grass. We put a grazing muzzle on them, or we dry lot them, or whatever it takes to keep them from getting out there and redoing the laminitis in particular. Because no foot, no horse is a very true thing. So very manageable disease. I have many, many horses on Pergolide, and they do wonderful. They can continue their showing careers, take the kids around the property, go on a nice trail ride, any of that stuff.
Perfect. Okay, that's the good news that I needed at the end. Thank you, Dr. Burke. It's very manageable. He's not going to die tomorrow. Okay,
not going to die. Well, not for a long time.
Oh, thanks, Dr. Burke. Dr. Brian Burke of the Fox Run or Fun Run Equine Center in Pennsylvania. The phone number there is, I guess I don't need to give out the number. What's your website?
FoxRunEquineCenter.com.
Fantastic. If you guys live in the area, call Dr. Burke. He's a wealth of information. Thank you very much, Dr. Burke, and we will look forward to talking to you again soon.
And that about wraps it up. This podcast was made possible by Wintec Saddles and the generous support of listeners like you. Learn how you can help support Horse Radio Network programming and qualify for perks by going to horsetipdaily.com and clicking on the Become an Auditor banner in the center of the page. Sometimes it's on the right. You never know. This is Coach Jen, and I will be back again soon with another tip. Until then, go ride your horse. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements made by guests on the Horse Tip Daily. Please use your own judgment when listening to the tips on this show.